So if you're a viewer of mine, you probably know me as that long-haired guy who talks about the news on YouTube, and I'm constantly in your notifications because I post a bunch of videos every single day about what exactly is going on. But I wanted to make a video to talk a little bit about another life of mine, my entrepreneurial life, and how I managed to earn my first $1 million or generate my first $1 million between the ages of 13 and 20. Now I'm 25 right now, but I wanted to focus it on the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey because I think that's the most important part of the entrepreneurial journey, what you do to set the bedrock in order to have a long, successful career. And I think that applies more to most people, the very beginnings. What happens after you've already had some success doesn't seem to matter quite as much as what you do up front in order to get that success. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my journey here. And I'm going to break down year by year from ages 13 to 20, how I was able to just generate a little bit more every year from age 13 to 20 before I finally generated my first $1 million, which I think is like the first really big milestone for any entrepreneur or business-minded person or success-driven person. So you'll see it starts out extremely slow. For the first few years, just a lot of work, a lot of pounding my head against the wall. And really it felt like that for the first 10 years, if I'm being completely honest, before things really felt like they were going well. So you'll see it starts slow and then ramps up. You'll see the exponential growth here. So if you're wondering why I'm looking down, I have some notes here for the exact numbers of things. So starting out 13 years old, I got my first job. I was working on a farm for $6.25 an hour, shoveling cow crap, lifting stuff, driving skid steers around at 13 years old. I think one time I actually hit the top of the barn with the skid steer bucket and like broke a piece of wood off. And I was kind of like, I'm 13, you were letting me drive a skid steer when I was 13. So anyways, I was doing all this hard work for like $50 a day, $6.25 an hour. I earned $2,000 the first few months that I worked there. And I eventually got a parasite from that job, and then I quit after that. But anyways, because of that experience at the farm, I decided, you know what, I would do literally anything for $15 an hour. So I made this little flyer at the computer lab at my high school, printed out like 50 of them that just said, I'll do any miscellaneous general labor for $15 an hour. And I put it on the doors of all my nearby neighbors because I didn't have a vehicle at that time. It was only walking distance, and I grew up in a really small town. So pretty much my neighborhood of that like 50 homes were my only option as far as earning money and being able to walk there and do some work. And it actually worked. I got a few clients from this, and I just started a small landscaping company. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but this was the beginning of kind of my entrepreneurial life. It really gave me a taste of, oh, there's actually money out there to earn if you're willing to just do things a little bit differently and figure out another way to earn a little bit more money. Now, I wasn't rich by any means at this point, but I was earning far more than $6.25 an hour. So I earned about $2,000 in the first summer with that small landscaping company. So my total age 13 revenue came out to $4,000, and my total revenue for this $1 million journey is $4,000. Now, age 14, I kept at the landscaping company. I didn't work at the farm anymore. It grew slightly from the previous year. We're going to go through a few of these years pretty quickly. And we did $3,000 that year with the landscaping company. This is just in the summer. And I wasn't like driven or focused to earn as much as possible at this time. It was just like a side gig to get some extra money in and feel kind of productive. So age 14 revenue, $3,000, total revenue, $7,000. And another important point here, I basically spent no money. I wasn't spending money going out with friends out to the movies or buying snacks at the gas station or anything like that. Literally everything I could save just went straight in my bank account, and that was very important for my later opportunities, and I didn't realize that up front, but it ended up being the reason why I was able to do some bigger things come a few years later. So my total revenue, age 14, $7,000. Now, age 15, again, I grew the landscaping company a little bit more by adding a few accounts. I would just go and work as hard as I had no frame of reference of how hard I was working because I didn't really have experience of working a job with other people. So I would go and just work as hard as I possibly could, like zero breaks, as hard as I could. And I didn't realize like the value these people were getting for $15 an hour cash at the time. I was like, hey, this is awesome. But then looking back at it now, I was like, okay, yeah, that was well worth the $15 an hour. If they were to hire a regular landscaping company, they would have easily been paying $80 to $100 an hour for the same work that I was doing. But anyways, I was still happy with it. I grew the landscaping company slightly, did about $4,000 that summer, age 15. So my total age 15 revenue, $4,000. That brings my total revenue to $11,000, just over 1% on the way to $1 million. Now, age 16, things are going to start moving a little bit more here, but still we don't quite see the exponential growth. I added a few sources of income this year. First, I picked up a gig for a few hours a week as a janitor cleaning a daycare. This was for $15 an hour as well. I actually love that job. I think being a janitor is kind of an underrated job. I was just in this big building by myself in the evenings a few times a week, and I would just blare music. I'd eat some snacks while I'm working. I was just singing, mopping stuff. Like it was pretty fun actually. That was only a few hours a week though. It was like two or three times a week, maybe 10 hours a week. I made like $2,000 from that in the first year, but that enabled me to make some money in the winter months because my landscaping company was only during the summer. And then a second gig that I did in the second half of being 16, this is kind of when the real entrepreneurial wheels started turning. I actually started a small sports supplementation company. I was really into sports and working out and weightlifting and things like that, and just interested in supplements, but I had a big concern at the time because there wasn't a lot of transparency with supplements and what you could and couldn't take, and not break the rules of banned substances in sports. I was really concerned about, accidentally taking a supplement that contained something that could then cause some problems in my sports career. I don't know if I was just being overly concerned or not, but this led me to creating my own pre-workout product, and it was like a legitimate product. I consulted with a sports scientist to formulate a pre-workout that I then ordered from a manufacturer and had shipped to me, and then put it all in packaging and sold it, made the label, did all this. None of these people I was working with knew I was 16 years old, by the way. I probably, looking back, made it seem like I was in my 30s or something like that. And all the correspondence was over email. If those people knew that they were working with a 16-year-old, they'd probably be like, what is going on here? So I had a legitimate product with a barcode, label, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and sell this thing. And I started selling it. I didn't really know how to market this, how to do things with sales. A lot of my friends had purchased these because they were in the similar boat as me. Like they didn't want to buy any kind of banned substance or anything like that. I sold a few online, and this was a viable business for a few years. Never made me a ton of money. But in the first 6 months, I did about $2,400 in sales from this. And then I still kept the landscaping business. It was now doing $5,000 in the summer, a very part-time gig. And this increase in the amount of revenue that I made that summer was due to taking on more lawn mowing clients. And that made the difference between me making $15 an hour and $40 an hour mowing lawns. So it was all about how much I could earn in the time that I worked. And again, I still wasn't working very much. We're talking 10 hours a week or something like that. But $40 an hour as a 16-year-old, that's amazing. And so my total age 16 revenue was $9,400, and then my total revenue up to age 16 was $20,400. So we're still at a pretty small amount relative to $1 million, but things are getting better. I'm starting to slowly figure things out. Not to say I even have things completely figured out now, but I was learning more from age 13 to 16. Now, age 17, still had the janitor job. I made $2,500 that year with the janitor job. Still had the supplement company. I made $400 a month on average with that company, which came out to about $4,800 that year. I still had the landscaping company, which that summer I earned $6,000, just picking up a few more clients. I started mowing lawns for a few relatives as well. Basically, people would see me either riding the mower down the street to go and do someone's lawn, or neighbors talk and they're like, hey, this kid really works hard. He's worth the $15 an hour or whatever that I was charging for this. It was really all about word of mouth, and again, it was still a very part-time job. So age 17 revenue, $13,300. And again, most of my time was still spent on sports. I was very into track and field and pole vaulting, and I was dead set on becoming like a professional pole vaulter. So earning as much as I could wasn't my exact goal, but I was turning into this earning machine kind of without even realizing it. I was learning all these things so much younger than the average person does. So again, age 17 revenue, $13,300. Total revenue through age 17, $33,700. And I was saving pretty much everything I possibly could at that point. Of that $33,000, I probably had $17,000 or $18,000 actually saved up in my bank account at age 17 just from gigs and stuff that I was doing. Now, age 18, this wasn't the greatest year of my life in terms of progress towards future goals. Just before I turned 18, I moved away to college, which meant a lot of changes to my business life and my earning potential because most of the earnings that I was making were in my hometown and I was moving pretty far away. And then in college, I ran track. I had a full class schedule. I had track meets on the weekends. And most of my business related activity just had to be put on hold because I just needed to figure out the college life, the college athlete life and managing all of that. And I just didn't have the time or the wherewithal to keep operating all these various businesses. Now I still had the small supplement company, but that had even scaled back to about like $300 a month. I made some regular online sales, but nothing huge by any means. It was about $3,600 that year. And no more singing janitor job, blaring Adele, sweeping the floors in the middle of the night, no more landscaping company. And looking back, this was probably the least productive year of my life. Age 18 revenue, total revenue, $3,600. Now, luckily, I didn't have a bunch of debt from college. I didn't have any student loans or anything like that. Because of scholarships, my tuition, I think, was literally $35 a semester. So I was very lucky on that front to be able to have a couple scholarships that paid for basically everything. Now, my total revenue through age 18 was $37,300, barely an increase from age 17. Now, age 19, this is when things really turn around for good old Max. I dropped out of college. I was going to college for entrepreneurial studies, and I wasn't enjoying pole vault as much as I used to, and I was just kind of feeling like, what am I doing here? I felt like either I finish college, get my entrepreneurial studies degree, and then start a business, or I drop out and then start a business right now. And I just ended up dropping out and starting a business right then. Now, I'm not saying that college is horrible or bad for everyone. I think it's good for certain people. It just wasn't good for me at the time. At least I thought so, but it was also a big risk. And I could have fallen flat on my face, and I was definitely concerned about falling flat on my face. So I dropped out of college, moved from Minnesota to Arizona, where I knew no one except I moved with a buddy, but we had no friends or family here. Now, in the first few months, while figuring out what exactly I was going to do, pretty much all I did was either go to the gym or go to the library. I spent so much time just reading. I read every single finance book at the library in Tempe, Arizona, which I think is like, that sounds like a lot, but I think it was like 28 books or something like that. I read every single one because I wanted to understand everything I could about finance, because I really wanted to get into equities and finance and try to earn money that way. And then after reading all these books, I realized you need to have a bunch of money up front to make a bunch of money from equities and stocks and things like that. So then I was like, okay, I need to start another business and earn a bunch of money, and then later I can get back into finance. But it was still built this base of knowledge on just how to understand finances in a business, so I could later run more profitable businesses, understand balance sheets and income statements and things like that. And that was a huge advantage later on. So I figured if I wasn't going to school, I needed to self-teach and, continuously read books and learn and get better at things. And I'm very glad that I did that. Also at age 19, I just worked a few odd jobs that earned me maybe like $500, just kind of to get by as I was figuring things out. I still had the supplement company kind of side hustle going on for a few $100s a month. And then I got another job as a mover for $14 an hour, and that earned me about $3,000 that year. So while I was working as a mover, this is when I started my first legitimate business enterprise. It wasn't just me, working as a landscaper or anything like that. I started a pool cleaning business. Now, this was very, very slow to start. I got 0 clients for the first month. I think probably the first month and a half. I got 0 clients despite a ton of effort to try and find clients. But luckily, after about the month and a half mark, I cracked that marketing nut and figured out how to pick up clients and do it actually very cheap compared to most of my competitors, surprisingly. I figured that out. So after a few months, that allowed me to quit my moving company job and focus completely on my pool cleaning business, as I was getting enough money coming in to be able to sustain me. And I was like, hey, I'm making pretty good money with this. I grew that to about 50 accounts. And then at that point, I wasn't able to spend a whole lot more time on the pool cleaning business, because after the first 5 or 6 months or so, an entirely new opportunity arose. I was offered to purchase the moving company that I had worked at a few months back. Basically, the owner of this company, who I hadn't met before, came into town. He was trying to figure out what to do with the moving company. The manager wasn't doing a good job. And a few of the employees at the moving company was like, hey, maybe you want to talk to this guy. He used to work here. He started his own business. Maybe he'd be interested in taking it over. So we met, and it seemed too good to be true at first. It was basically an asset sale. Purchased the business just for the assets that it had. I had a few trucks and supplies and things like that. It wasn't super expensive, but I still was very like, I don't know if this is legit or not. I talked to a couple lawyers. After a lot of deliberation, I just decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to make the jump. I'm going to try this thing. I invested literally every single dollar I had in my bank account, and I was now in the moving business. Now, this was very expensive for me at the time to get all the insurance, start a down payment on the trucks. All of a sudden, I had multiple employees. It was a very chaotic time, to say the least. The first month of the moving company, we only did $5,000 in sales. I say only $5,000 in sales. However, that would have probably been my record month with the pool company, at least close to my record month, if not the record. So starting out, we were already, I grew the pool company, and then I kind of leaped to the next thing that at its worst was still, pretty much at the best of the pool company. And that's constantly what I'm looking for even now. What's the next thing I can leap to that might 10x my earning potential? So the first month we did about $5,000 in sales, but it grew exponentially from then. And actually in the first calendar year of this company, we did $210,000 in revenue at my moving company. I say we, but it was 100% ownership. But I say we because I had multiple employees, and it literally would not be possible without those employees. So as you can see, we scaled up real slow, and then there was a big takeoff point from the major risk that I took on the moving company. So my age 19 revenue was $426,000. My total revenue up to this point was $463,300. You can see in that 1 year, it was like 95% of my total earnings up to that point. There was just this big takeoff point. Now on to 20 years old. And this is the last year that we're going to do in this breakdown. The moving company was really just rocketing in growth at this point. I wanted to expand as fast as I possibly could. I wanted to be the biggest, baddest moving company there ever was. At this point, I shut down the supplement company because I was like $300 a month, $400 a month. That's not worth my time. And it's important to be able to realize when things aren't worth your time anymore. Now, I still own the pool cleaning business, though. I had 2 employees with that at the time, and it did about $48,000 that year. And I owned it for a few years after that before I eventually sold it. And I have lots of other videos on the pool cleaning industry because I think it's a great industry still. The moving company continued to grow. I opened some out-of-state locations. I opened one in Utah and one in Texas, and now I was a nationwide business owner at age 20 with employees all over the place. I think I probably had 50 employees at this point in time when I was 20. And a question I get asked all the time, just kind of going back to the purchase of the moving company, from young entrepreneurs, they're worried about employees not respecting them because they might be younger than the employees. And this was a concern I had going into it too, because when I started, for the first several years, I was the youngest person at the company, counting all of my employees, because there really wasn't anyone who's 19 or 20 years old. Everyone was mid-20s to 30s. And I was worried about that. I was worried about the respect. And to be honest, it was never an issue. If you treat other people with respect, it just all works out. And there's also this thing just in the United States, I think in general, that people love to see young people working hard and hustling and seeing success from that. So I think the fact that I was working as hard as I possibly could with this company, I was on jobs, I was doing all the paper. It was like 14, 15 hours a day, every single day. I think the employees who you might have thought they would be jealous or spiteful or not respectful. They were like, okay, I get it. This guy's working hard. And it just was never actually an issue when it came down to it. And I think it just comes down to mutual respect. And I'm glad it wasn't an issue, but I know that was a big concern for a lot of people. So I opened those out-of-state locations 2 months after I turned 20 years old. These companies did $821,000 that year. So my age 20 revenue was $869,000. My total revenue at that point, total amount of money generated, was $1,332,300. I finally cracked that $1 million nut at 20 years old. And I think at the time I didn't really think about it because I probably didn't know exactly when I cracked that $1 million nut, but I probably was also like, this is great, but I still have to go to work tomorrow. There wasn't like enough time to celebrate. And I find that happens a lot. When I pass certain milestones, I'm like, that's cool, keep on working. So it took about 7.5 years to earn my first $1 million in revenue. But then what's crazy is in order to hit my second $1 million in revenue, it only took about 1 year. And then my third $1 million, it only took about 6 months. And from there, this thing has really just scaled. And it really comes down to, I think, the compounding of not only saving, but working hard and just doing as much as I possibly can on a daily basis to just get all the things done. And really just years and years and years of feeling like I'm stalling. Like I see the numbers going up, but personally I'm like, man, I just feel like there should be more progress. And then finally in the last probably year or two, I've finally been like, okay, I really feel the fruit of the labor in my last 10 or so years of everything compounding. And finally I'm like reaping some massive returns at this point. And really, I just wanted to talk about this because I wanted to highlight how possible it is. I didn't have any personal connections to make this happen. I didn't have a ton of money or a big inheritance to invest. It really came to, it really was just a kid from a small town in rural Minnesota who moved away and decided to both learn and work and take a couple risks, and it eventually worked out. Like, it's much more doable than it seems, and I hope that this video helps kind of illuminate how doable these things can be. And really, you don't have to start at 13 to see some success. You could be 40 right now, and now might be the time to really have a turning point and start making things happen. Yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about on this, is kind of my beginning journey. If you made it to this point in the video, I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.